Rain has a way of making heartbreak feel louder. Every drop that struck the pavement that cold evening sounded like another promise being shattered forever. Amelia sat alone on a weathered bench outside the fertility clinic, clutching a folded medical report so tightly that the edges had cut into her trembling fingers. Just 30 minutes earlier, the man she had loved for 7 years had looked at her with eyes that once held dreams of forever and quietly walked away. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't cried. He simply told her that he wanted a real family, and that he couldn't spend his life with a woman who could never give him children. Then he turned his back and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Amelia with nothing but silence, rain, and a future that suddenly felt empty beyond words. Before we continue this emotional journey, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who still believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel. Every small act of support helps us bring more inspiring stories that remind the world compassion still exists. For hours, Amelia remained there as people hurried past without noticing the young woman whose entire world had collapsed. She wasn't angry anymore. She was exhausted. The diagnosis hadn't only taken away her dream of becoming a mother. It had stolen her confidence, her hope, and the life she had carefully imagined since childhood. She kept asking herself the same painful question. If the person who claimed to love her forever could leave because of something she couldn't control, would anyone ever truly choose her again? The next morning, she returned to the small apartment she could barely afford. Every corner reminded her of plans that would never happen. The nursery decorations she had secretly collected over the years suddenly looked foolish. Tiny baby shoes she once bought on impulse now felt like cruel reminders of a future slipping farther away. She packed everything into boxes and carried them into the closet without opening them again. Life became mechanical. She continued working as a children's librarian because reading stories to little ones was the only part of her day that still brought genuine smiles. The children adored her. They laughed at her funny voices during story time, hugged her without hesitation, and proudly showed her their drawings. Every innocent smile warmed her heart while quietly breaking it at the same time. Nobody at work knew what she was carrying inside. She smiled. She encouraged children. She comforted worried parents. Then every evening she returned home to cry herself to sleep. Months passed that way until one rainy afternoon changed everything. The library had organized a charity reading event for underprivileged children. Families filled every seat while volunteers served snacks and distributed books. Amelia had almost canceled because emotionally she felt drained, but something inside urged her to go. As she began reading, she noticed 4 children entering together. Their clothes were expensive, but their faces lacked the carefree happiness most children carried. The oldest girl, perhaps 12 years old, held the youngest boy's hand protectively. 2 other children followed quietly behind her. Walking several steps behind them was a tall man in a navy suit. His appearance immediately caught everyone's attention, yet his face looked strangely distant, as though success had become a prison instead of a blessing. His name was Daniel Carter. Across the city, nearly everyone recognized him as the billionaire CEO who had built one of the country's largest technology companies. Newspapers praised his business brilliance almost weekly. Investors admired him, competitors feared him. Very few people knew the lonely man hidden beneath those headlines. 3 years earlier, his wife had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him alone with 4 grieving children who desperately needed a father, while he himself barely knew how to survive the loss. Money could buy beautiful houses, money could hire nannies, money could build companies, but it couldn't replace bedtime hugs from a mother. Nor could it teach a broken father how to heal 4 broken hearts. Daniel rarely attended public events anymore, but his eldest daughter had insisted on visiting the library because her mother had loved reading stories aloud. As Amelia continued reading, something remarkable happened. The youngest boy, Noah, who reportedly hadn't smiled in months, suddenly laughed out loud during one of her silly character voices. The sound froze Daniel completely. It had been so long since he had heard genuine laughter from his son that tears almost filled his eyes. When story time ended, the children surrounded Amelia asking for another story. She happily sat on the carpet with them, forgetting everyone else in the room. Daniel watched from a distance. For the first time since losing his wife, he saw someone who wasn't trying to impress his family because of money or status. She wasn't looking at his expensive watch. She wasn't trying to attract his attention. She simply cared about making 4 hurting children smile. That image remained in his mind long after they left. Days later, Daniel surprised himself by donating hundreds of books to the library. Officially, the donation supported literacy. Unofficially, he hoped to see Amelia again. She thanked him politely, unaware of who he really was until coworkers whispered excitedly after he left. Even after discovering his identity, nothing about her attitude changed. She treated him exactly as she treated everyone else. That alone fascinated him. Over the following weeks, Daniel found increasingly reasonable excuses to visit. Sometimes the children wanted new books. Sometimes they attended reading clubs. Sometimes he simply accompanied them because they insisted. Each visit slowly transformed something inside the Carter family. The youngest children became excited every weekend. The older daughter began laughing more often. Even Daniel found himself smiling without realizing it. Amelia remained completely unaware of how important she had become in their lives. She simply believed she was helping children rediscover happiness. One afternoon, Noah fell while running outside the library and scraped his knees badly. Instead of calling for his father, he instinctively reached for Amelia. Without hesitation, she picked him up, comforted him gently, cleaned the wound, and patiently distracted him with funny stories until the tears disappeared. Daniel witnessed every moment. He noticed how naturally she cared for his son, not because she wanted anything, not because someone was watching, because kindness was simply who she was. Driving home that evening, he couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. For years, he believed his children needed someone perfect, someone extraordinary, someone capable of replacing what they had lost. Now he realized they simply needed someone with a heart big enough to love without conditions. Meanwhile, Amelia wrestled with emotions she refused to acknowledge. She cared deeply for the Carter children, perhaps too deeply. Whenever they hugged her goodbye, a familiar ache settled inside her chest. She reminded herself repeatedly that they weren't her family. They never would be. Eventually, they would move on. Everyone always did. One evening, Daniel invited the entire library staff to a charity gala supporting children's education. Amelia almost declined because she owned nothing elegant enough to wear. Her elderly neighbor quietly insisted she borrow a simple navy dress that had belonged to her daughter. Standing before the mirror, Amelia barely recognized herself. She looked beautiful. Not because of expensive clothes, but because hope had quietly returned to her eyes for the first time in months. The gala overflowed with celebrities, politicians, investors, and socialites. Amelia felt completely out of place. Many guests whispered about the mysterious librarian Daniel, seemed unusually interested in greeting personally. Some assumed she was another ambitious woman hoping to marry wealth. Others dismissed her entirely. She ignored them all. Throughout the evening, she spent most of her time entertaining children attending the charity event instead of networking with influential guests. Daniel noticed, again. She always chose people over appearances. As the evening drew to a close, one unexpected moment changed everything. The youngest children wandered onto the dance floor. Music filled the room. Little Noah ran directly toward Amelia. Without asking permission, he wrapped both arms around her waist and loudly announced that she danced just like his mommy used to. The ballroom fell strangely quiet. Amelia's eyes immediately filled with tears. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. Nobody had mentioned their mother in public for over a year. Yet somehow Noah felt safe enough to remember, safe enough to smile, safe enough to love again. Daniel understood then that healing sometimes arrives quietly, wearing ordinary clothes, carrying library books instead of miracles. Over the following months, Amelia became a trusted friend of the family. She joined birthday celebrations. She helped with homework. She baked cookies despite burning half of them. She listened whenever the older children struggled with grief. Slowly, the empty mansion transformed into something warmer, not because luxury increased, because laughter returned. Still, Amelia carefully guarded one painful secret. She had never told Daniel why her previous relationship ended. She feared that if he learned she could never have children, history would repeat itself. She couldn't survive that heartbreak twice. Then fate intervened. One afternoon, an old acquaintance recognized her while she was shopping with the Carter children. Without realizing the damage those careless words would cause, the woman loudly remarked how tragic it had been that Amelia's fiancé abandoned her after learning she was infertile. Time seemed to freeze. The children looked confused. Daniel remained completely silent. Amelia felt every wound reopen at once. Embarrassed beyond words, she apologized awkwardly before rushing away in tears. That night she packed away every gift the children had ever given her. She convinced herself it was over. Surely Daniel deserved someone capable of giving him more children someday. Surely he would see her as incomplete. She prepared herself for goodbye before he even spoke. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. Instead of distance, there was a gentle knock on her apartment door. Standing outside wasn't a billionaire CEO. It wasn't the city's most successful businessman. It was simply a tired father holding 4 handmade drawings. Each child had drawn the same picture, a smiling woman surrounded by 5 happy faces. Across the top, written in colorful, uneven handwriting, were words that shattered every wall Amelia had built around her heart. Not because she could give birth, not because she was perfect, but because she had already given something far more precious: love. Before this unforgettable ending arrives, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment with the words, "Love makes a family." Your message may inspire someone who desperately needs hope today. Daniel looked at Amelia with quiet certainty, knowing that the greatest mothers are not always the ones who give life, but often the ones who give unconditional love. And for the first time since her world had fallen apart on that rainy afternoon outside the clinic, Amelia realized that perhaps life had never been taking something away from her. Perhaps it had been gently leading her toward the family that had been waiting for her all along. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your family and friends, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that remind the world that love is not measured by blood, wealth, or perfection, but by the kindness we choose to give every single day. Sometimes the family we lose is not the one we were meant to have. Sometimes life closes one painful door only because, somewhere ahead, 4 children and 1 lonely father are waiting to open another with love that lasts forever. Amelia stared at the children's drawings for what felt like forever. Her hands trembled so badly that she almost dropped them. Each picture had been made with innocent hearts that knew nothing about medical reports, heartbreak, or society's cruel definitions of what made a woman worthy. In every drawing, she stood in the center, surrounded by 4 smiling children and Daniel. Above their heads were bright yellow suns, colorful flowers, and hearts of every size. There were no empty spaces, no sadness, no signs that she was missing anything. To those children, she was already someone special. Tears streamed down her face as years of pain collided with a hope she had been too afraid to believe. Daniel quietly stepped inside the apartment after Amelia invited him in. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with emotions that neither of them could immediately put into words. He looked around the small living room and noticed the neatly packed boxes hidden in the corner. Curious, he asked about them, and Amelia finally confessed everything. She admitted that she had packed away every memory connected to the Carter family, because she believed the truth about her infertility would eventually make him walk away just as someone else once had. She had convinced herself that leaving first would hurt less than being abandoned again. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finally finished speaking, he smiled with tears in his own eyes. He gently explained that his dream had never been to find someone who could give him more children. His greatest fear was finding someone who couldn't truly love the 4 children who already depended on him. He had spent years watching people admire his wealth while avoiding the responsibility that came with becoming part of a family carrying so much grief. Many women saw his success. Few saw his children. Amelia had been different from the very beginning. She had fallen in love with 4 broken hearts long before she ever noticed the size of his company. His words slowly dissolved the walls Amelia had spent months building around herself. For the first time since receiving her diagnosis, she realized that perhaps she had been measuring her value by something that had never truly defined her. Motherhood was not only about giving birth. It was about giving love, protection, patience, comfort, and hope. Those were gifts she had already been giving without even realizing it. From that day forward, their relationship changed naturally. There was no dramatic announcement, no sudden romance that seemed unrealistic. Instead, their friendship slowly blossomed into something deeper through ordinary moments. Amelia helped Noah practice reading before bedtime. She attended Emma's school art exhibition. She comforted 10-year-old Liam after he failed an important exam, reminding him that one bad day could never define his future. She encouraged little Sophie to overcome her fear of riding a bicycle by jogging beside her until she learned to balance on her own. Each child healed differently. Emma, the oldest, finally stopped pretending to be an adult before her time. She allowed herself to become a carefree teenager again, because someone else was helping carry the emotional weight she had silently shouldered since her mother's passing. Liam rediscovered his confidence. Sophie laughed louder than ever before, and Noah, whose smile had once disappeared completely, became the happiest child in the house. Even the employees at Daniel's company noticed the transformation. Their once serious CEO now left work on time whenever possible. Meetings ended earlier. Weekend emails became rare. Investors initially questioned his changing priorities, but the company's performance continued improving because Daniel himself had become healthier, calmer, and more focused. Success no longer felt empty. He finally had something worth going home to. Not everyone celebrated their happiness. News of Daniel's growing relationship with Amelia quickly attracted media attention. Headlines questioned why one of the country's wealthiest CEOs had fallen for an ordinary librarian instead of a famous celebrity or influential businesswoman. Television commentators speculated endlessly. Online critics claimed Amelia must have manipulated her way into his life. The cruelest rumors centered around her infertility. Anonymous strangers wrote that she was lucky to find a man who already had children because no one else would want her. Those words reopened old wounds. Late one evening, Amelia secretly read hundreds of hateful comments until tears blurred her vision. She began wondering if perhaps the critics were right. Maybe Daniel deserved someone whose life carried less controversy. The next morning, she quietly tried creating distance. She declined breakfast with the family. She skipped weekend outings. She stopped answering messages as quickly as before. The children noticed immediately, especially Noah. One afternoon, Daniel returned home to find Noah sitting on the front steps, holding one of Amelia's favorite storybooks. The little boy looked unusually quiet. When Daniel asked what was wrong, Noah simply replied that he thought Amelia no longer loved them. Those innocent words pierced Daniel's heart. That evening, he drove straight to Amelia's apartment. This time, he didn't bring flowers or gifts. He brought printed copies of every hateful article and cruel comment he could find. Without saying a word, he placed them on the table. Then, one by one, he tore every page into tiny pieces. He looked at Amelia with complete certainty. The opinions of strangers, he explained, could never outweigh the love that existed inside their home. Those people had never watched her comfort frightened children during thunderstorms. They had never seen her spend hours helping with homework after exhausting workdays. They had never witnessed her kneel beside Noah's bed until he finally slept peacefully after another nightmare about losing his mother. They judged her by a medical diagnosis. He judged her by her heart, and to him, her heart was extraordinary. Those simple words accomplished what thousands of compliments never could. For the first time in years, Amelia stopped apologizing for something she had never chosen. Months later, during a family camping trip by a quiet mountain lake, Daniel planned something unforgettable. The children secretly helped him decorate a wooden dock with lanterns and wildflowers gathered from nearby fields. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains, golden light reflected across the calm water while birds sang softly in the distance. Amelia thought they had gathered simply to watch the sunset. Instead, Daniel knelt before her. His voice shook with emotion as he admitted that after losing his wife, he believed happiness had ended forever. He had buried not only the love of his life, but also every dream of having a complete family again. Then one ordinary librarian had unknowingly walked into their lives, carrying nothing but kindness, patience, and an endless capacity to love. He told her she had never replaced the children's mother, because no one ever could. Instead, she had written a beautiful new chapter that honored the past while giving everyone permission to hope again. Finally, he asked the question she never imagined hearing. He asked if she would choose them forever. Before Amelia could answer, Noah shouted yes. Then Sophie, then Liam. Finally, Emma wiped away happy tears and whispered that she had been waiting for this day longer than anyone realized. Laughing and crying at the same time, Amelia nodded. The children rushed toward her before Daniel even slipped the ring onto her finger. It became one enormous family hug beneath a sky glowing with thousands of stars. Their wedding took place 6 months later in a peaceful botanical garden surrounded by close friends, family, and hundreds of children from the libraries and charities Amelia had served over the years. Instead of expensive decorations, the aisle was lined with children's handwritten notes describing what kindness meant to them. There wasn't a dry eye in attendance. During the ceremony, the 4 children surprised Amelia with handwritten letters. Emma thanked her for giving her permission to be a child again. Liam thanked her for teaching him that mistakes never define a person. Sophie thanked her for always believing in her. Little Noah simply wrote one sentence. "You didn't have to give birth to me to become my mom." There wasn't a single person who could hold back tears after hearing those words. Years passed. The Carter family continued growing, not through childbirth, but through love. Together, Daniel and Amelia expanded children's literacy programs across the country. They built libraries in underserved communities and created scholarships for children who had lost parents. Amelia became a nationally recognized advocate for adoption, foster care, and families created through unconditional love rather than biology. Ironically, the woman once rejected because she couldn't become a mother inspired millions by showing the world that motherhood was never limited to giving birth. One afternoon, several years after their wedding, Amelia received an unexpected letter. It came from the man who had abandoned her outside the fertility clinic years before. His marriage had failed. His dreams hadn't unfolded the way he expected. He admitted that leaving her remained the greatest regret of his life. Amelia quietly folded the letter without anger, without satisfaction, without resentment. She walked into the backyard where Daniel and the children were laughing together while trying to build an oversized treehouse. Noah waved excitedly for her to come help. She smiled, then she dropped the letter into the recycling bin. Some chapters are not meant to be reopened. They are meant to remind us how far we've come. As the evening sun painted the sky orange and gold, Amelia looked around at the people surrounding her. 4 children called her mom. 1 man loved her without conditions. A home once filled with grief now echoed with laughter every single day. She finally understood something that had taken years to learn. Life had never made a mistake. The diagnosis that once felt like the end of her story had quietly redirected her toward the family she was always meant to find. Sometimes the greatest blessings arrive disguised as heartbreak. Sometimes rejection becomes protection. And sometimes the family that chooses you becomes even more beautiful than the one you once dreamed of. Before we say goodbye, we'd love to hear from you. Please comment below with the words, "Love creates family." Your message may give hope to someone who feels broken or believes they are not enough.